We met because she placed a personals ad in one of those little free classified newspapers. It wasn't until years later I found out that morning she actually had a dream of me before we'd ever met. Neither of us had any plans on getting married again. It just like one of those things where you just meet your person. When I would have these sudden grief attacks, like just came out of the blue. Just before I felt all that grief hit me, there was this sense of my wife. I told her, look, I think that's you. Don't stop doing that because it triggers my grief. I told her, I will figure it out. I will figure out how to separate those two things. Just keep coming because we can't figure this out and develop, some way of interacting with each other unless we just keep doing it.
Welcome to Next Realm, Beautiful Stories from Beyond, a show that explores the profound and heartwarming stories of individuals who've experienced messages from their departed loved ones. I'm your host, Amber Rasmussen, and today's guest is William. He met the love of his life and was married for 27 years when tragedy hit. But just when he thought he couldn't take the pain of her loss one more day, he found a way to continue their relationship, and you'll never guess how he did it.
We're talking about my wife. We were married for 27 years. Her name's Irene. We met because she placed a personals ad in one of those little free classified newspapers. I was looking to buy some things for around the house, just see if I could find some cheap things to buy for around the house. I actually dropped it on the floor. And then one night when it was sat there for like 2 weeks. And then one night when I picked it up, I decided to read it. And I saw this personals ad that basically described me. So, she listed my height, my weight. This is for her, the man she wanted to meet, the kind of man she wanted to meet, my eye color, sense of humor. So I just thought, well, okay, that's kind of describing me, so I'll respond. Back in those days, you sent a letter in to the classified publisher, and then they forwarded it to the person who placed the ad. It wasn't until years later I found out that morning she actually had a dream of me before we'd ever met. We lived about 20 miles apart. So we decided to meet about at a halfway point, the parking lot of the Dairy Queen, actually in this town that I'm still living in. I told her I'd be on a motorcycle. I got a leather jacket and a black hat. And so she pulls up and walks over directly to me. And her 3 kids get out of the truck and run into the Dairy Queen. She just starts talking to me. And it was the craziest thing. It was like, I had never heard anybody talk like that before. She was telling me about, those are my 3 kids. I was diagnosed with terminal cancer, but it went into remission. And she says, I've already had a double radical mastectomy. And this is, I'm telling you all this stuff along with some other stuff because I'm not playing any games and I don't want to, mess around and waste time. That was like the craziest thing I'd ever heard anybody say. Somebody walk up when they first meet you. She was very blunt and very honest. And, I was so impressed. There was like this immediate attraction to her character, to her, the way that she was. A couple of days later, I went out with a movie. That's when rented the VHS tape, and I took it out to her house and watched it with her kids. And then that next weekend, we had some private times that somebody was watching all of her kids. We stayed up all night talking, made out a little bit, and we were just completely and totally in love with each other at that point. Neither of us had any plans on getting married again. She had 2 marriages that didn't work out before. I had 2 marriages that didn't work out before. Neither of us were planning on anything like that, but it just like one of those things where you just meet your person and that's it. You're done.
William was absolutely smitten with Irene, and while they both weren't quite prepared to get married again, she had a little premonition of what was to come for the 2 of them.
We were driving to where my family lives. We just drove by this, what I just thought was a random, house, and she said, we're going to get married in that house. She said, back up. I passed it, and she goes, back up. She goes, we're going to get married in this house. And both of us are just dead broke. There's no way to afford the house. But, she said that, and I said, oh, okay. About I don't know, 2 or 3 months later, we were involved in a car accident where this car just pulled. We're going down the highway at 60 miles an hour. This car just coming the other way just turned right into us. Our car was smashed. It was completely smashed and totaled. Couldn't believe anybody survived the wreck. It was unbelievable. But anyway, we got insurance money from that. She noticed that there was an ad in the paper for a house in this town, house for sale. And of course, the wreck put me out of work. So I wasn't even working at the time. She wanted to go see the house because she was drawn to it, very psychic person. Well, we get here and she didn't know it. I didn't know it. It was the house that she had pointed at when said, "This is the house we're going to get married in." She didn't know it was that house. And so the woman who was selling the house was there, and she just kept staring at me the whole time. She goes, "Well, I'm not really renting it," because that's all we wanted to do was rent it, because until we had an income, we didn't want to try to buy a house. She wasn't going to sell us the house or rent it to us. And then all of a sudden she just said, "What did you say your name was again?" And she was asking me. I said, "Bill." And she just stared at me and said, "My husband's name was Bill, and you look exactly like him." So she goes, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to rent all this house until I can sell it." So it turns out we were living in that house when we got married. And we got married in that house.
Life took a left turn when Irene's cancer came back. But you can probably imagine that she was going to do everything in her power to make sure that Bill knew that she was still there.
First sign after she passed was my son and his wife were at the hospital with me. And so they brought me home. My son's wife is cooking dinner. And so we're sitting there, watching some TV. And I'm, I don't know, when you're in this situation, you don't know if you're in shock. You don't know if you're in denial. I mean, I couldn't tell you the state I was in. I wasn't breaking down crying at the time. I just felt in this kind of state. So my daughter-in-law brings me a plate of food and sets it down in front of me. And I look down at the food and I look at her and I pause the TV. And I asked her, "Did you plan this meal out?" She said, "No, that's just what I happened to have at the house." Whenever Irene wanted me to make my favorite meal, it was meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green peas. And that's exactly what my daughter-in-law had made me. And she had no idea. I asked her, "Did you know this is my favorite meal?" She had no idea. And I looked up at the TV, and it was a commercial for the cancer center that Irene had been going to for her treatments.
Oh, my goodness.
I had paused it.
Oh, my goodness. Where's your mouth just on the ground? Just,
oh, yeah.
whoa.
I was like, oh, my God.
This stuff is no joke. It comes fast. Wow.
That was amazing. Yeah.
Oh, so you knew she was there.
A few weeks after she died, and I was a mess. And I was going through her stuff. I was trying to find everything she'd ever written, because these things become very important to you. I want to see if she left any. She would write in different journals and stuff, and on different legal pads. And so I was going through her nightstand that she keeps at the side of the bed, and I'm looking through all the little things that she's got in there, and I'm pulling them out. And I noticed stuck on the inside of the compartment at the top, where there's a little gap in the wood, there was this legal pad that you couldn't see from above. You had to get in there and reach up and grab it. So I don't know if she even knew it was in there because it was stuck in there. And so I pulled it out and I kind of flipped through it real quick and I threw it on the bed. Of course, I'm doing this between, having little breakdowns. I'm just having little breakdowns. So I didn't find anything else in the nightstand. So I get up and I'm going to pick the legal pad up to take it somewhere. And I pick it up by the cardboard backing, and it flips open, and on the back side of the last sheet of paper, there's some writing. I open it up, and there's this little short thing she wrote when she was much younger, and it said that all she wanted in life was to love someone and have someone love them, and live in a little country, a 2-story house in a little country home with big yards where she can garden, and have room for all her kids, And I thought, wow, I mean, that exactly describes where we live, the house that we finally ended up in for many, many years. And my wife was always in the habit of dating and putting the time down, right? So I looked up at the date, and it was the same exact date that I was looking and reading at that. 43 years ago, when she was 17, is when she wrote that. And then I looked over at the time. It was the same time that she wrote down. I don't know how that notepad had survived 43 years of her moving around in the United States, going through several property catastrophes where she would lose all her stuff. So I said, I don't even think she knew it was in there, if it was even in there. I don't know if that was an apport or something else, that she gave me, but it was great.
As we all know, grief can be an overwhelming and debilitating thing to overcome. For Bill, he wanted to keep some things as normal as possible, and that meant making Irene her daily cup of coffee with a little splash of milk and a half a packet of Sweet and Low. But no sooner did he do this, did he notice something rather remarkable that he just couldn't take his eyes off.
One of the ways that I was psychologically taking care of myself is I was pretending she was still alive. I was trying to program my subconscious into believing that she was still with me so that it would stop reacting with such intense pain at every little thing, And just I would just drop to my knees on the floor sobbing. I'd have to get in my car and drive around and just scream. It was so bad. So I was just trying to get a handle on that. My goal was just to get the pain to a point where I could manage it for the rest of my life. So what I would do, my regular course is I'd still pour her coffee in her cup. Back then, I would just set it on the counter by the coffee pot on the kitchen counter. I would go out and sit on the porch and smoke a cigarette with my coffee and pretend I was talking to her, and just trying to visualize with my eyes open or shut that she was sitting next to me. When I went back into the kitchen at some point during the day, I noticed that there was a drawing at the top of the coffee. And it looked like a little radiant, I call them radiant flower. That's the first thing that popped in my head. It looks like a little radiant flower. Of course, my mind is just like, well, this is just physics of some sort. It's the overhead ceiling fan going, and it's just the mixture of the coffee and the little bit of milk I put in there and the Sweet and Low. I've never really looked at coffee, was sitting around before to really see if there's any designs in them afterwards. It was about a week or several days after that started. So that was happening every day when I set her coffee out. That same little design would end up in her coffee. We had a celebration of life. People brought a lot of flowers for her. And after the celebration of life, my family and friends brought all the flowers back to the house. And all the flowers died except one. Okay? And I'm talking about, over the course of a few days, they all wilt and this one pink tiger lily would not die. And so I had it sitting in a little vase on the kitchen counter next to the coffee, and it was like 2 weeks. And I looked at this thing; it looks like it's brand, freshly picked flower. Everything else is completely died. So it just blew my mind. I was watching TV. We had a recorded version, a recorded episode of Long Island Medium. So I'm watching Long Island Medium, one of the recorded ones, which we like to watch together. And as it's playing, there's a woman who's having a reading, and she's like got the same cancer Irene's got. She's got the same cannula that she's breathing through. A part of the show ends, and there's this commercial. So I'm just kind of, I'm not really watching. You watch a commercial, it's not really registering, especially when you're in pain. I realized, wait a minute, what was that last commercial? There was like this big bouquet of flowers on the last commercial. So I backed the TV up because this is all recorded. It's been sitting there recorded for I don't know how long. And we went through the commercials again. The commercial wasn't there. I was saying, I know I saw a commercial with flowers in it. So I backed it back up again and played it again. And there it was. I found it. This commercial was there. And it had a big bouquet of tiger lilies, pink tiger lilies, just like the tiger lily on the counter. So I was thinking, well, why didn't I see that the last time? So I backed it up to the previous commercial and then let it play. And then after that commercial ended, there was like this 1 second black pause, and then this entirely different commercial came on. And the only thing it said on the screen, there's a big black screen that says, "Are you in pain?" So I was like, what's going on here? I backed it up again, to the previous commercial, and I played it again. And instead of the Are You in Pain commercial, the commercial was the flower commercial. There's some kind of technology at work here, but this is such a crazy coincidence anyway. I was so flabbergasted by this. Next time my son was visiting me every day, and so at this point he comes in, I said, Robert, check this out. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. So I do it, and it won't play the flower commercial. It won't do it. It just kept saying, Are you in pain? Are you in pain? I'm going, Robert, I'm not kidding. I'm not losing my mind. I said, he goes, well, Dad, I believe you. It's all right. You don't have to. I said, I swear. So he leaves. And I said, babe, are you doing this just for me? So I did it again, and boom, there's a flower commercial. After he left, there it came on. So the other thing about the flower is that, so this is probably a few weeks after that. Of course, in my the back of my mind, I'm thinking this thing that's going on in her coffee is just physics. That's all that can be is physics. And so I was feeling a little bit better at that time. And so I told my wife, I really appreciate you putting that flower in the coffee every morning for me. But if you want to stop doing it, it's okay. You can stop. I'm doing pretty good now. I never in a million years thought it would stop, because I just thought, this is physics. I'm using the same milk every time, the same sweetener. And so the next day I put her coffee out, and it was the same milk, and it was the same sweetener. And in that day, nothing appeared. It was just smooth brown at the top, no drawing whatsoever. And I was like, it was sitting in the same place. There was no difference. Same ceiling fan was going on. There wasn't a mark. There wasn't anything on the top of that. I thought, well, that's the craziest thing. So the next day, I set it out. Once again, nothing showed up whatsoever. Not a single thing showed up on that thing. All day long, it's sitting out there all day long. Nothing showed up. And I realized I'd made a mistake. I realized, okay, maybe this isn't physics. And I would really, because I was like panicking. Oh my God, did I stop her from doing this? Now it's like, now that I know that it's her, I want to see that damn flower. I said out loud, babe, I think I made a mistake. Please start giving me that flower again. And so the next day, I poured the coffee, and it showed up.
Irene was sure busy sending signals. She even made her presence known during the Wheel of Fortune. Check it out.
I had a dream, and this was a visitation dream. I woke up, I was like in a group home, and I asked where Irene was. They said, well, she moved next door. She's got your house next door, or something like that. So I go next door. I go through the gate that's in her backyard between the houses, and I see her up on the porch. And she looks up at me, and she sees me, and she waves me up. She's like doing some gardening around the back porch. And she asked me if I wanted to see our home. So I said, yeah. And so she takes me inside. And so I walk inside, and we're not wherever we were before, but we're in this huge mountain lodge. My vision is ultra sharp, and I could see these huge windows, ceiling to floor windows. I could see the mountains, the snow-capped mountains outside. I can see the trees. You can see the fireplace and all the furniture. And she leads me around the other rooms, and she's showing me all the stuff in this mountain lodge. And it was very clear to me. It wasn't like the cabin was not the right word. It was a mountain lodge. I mean, this thing was huge. We got at the end of the tour, end of her showing me around, and we were sitting on the bed, and I told her I was going to take if she mind if I took a nap. She said, no, go ahead, take a nap. And so when I went to sleep in the dream, I woke up here. And so I wrote all that down real quick, and I posted it on a couple of different sites that I'm on, and I used the term mountain lodge. So that was in the morning. So in the evening, I realized it was time for Wheel of Fortune. I think I was writing something, and I realized, oh my God, it's time for Wheel of Fortune, because we always used to sit and watch Wheel of Fortune together, and we tried to keep doing that after she died, which sounds weird, but that's what we tried to do. But so I ran into the living room, and I turned on the TV, and then I turned the channel over to Wheel of Fortune, and caught it right at the point where they've already had their first short puzzle. They've already introduced the show, first short puzzle, and Pat was interviewing the contestants. So I hit pause real quick. Now, the way that my dish TV works at the time is when you put it on the channel, that's when it starts automatically recording the channel. You can't back up before that point. Okay. That's as far back as it goes on that channel. So I said, sorry, babe, I missed the beginning of it. Let me cook myself up some food. Let me cook us up some food, and we'll watch the rest of it. So I cooked some food, and I walked back into the living room, and I looked at the TV, and it wasn't paused where I had paused it. It was no longer on Pat interviewing a contestant. It was on what looked like a commercial. So I thought, what you do at that time, you just figure, well, I'm just misremembered, And so I turned the TV on, and so it started at the very beginning, the end of a commercial, and then the very beginning of Wheel of Fortune. And I was sitting there going, how the hell did that happen? There's no way it could have backed up and gotten the rest of that show. So we were watching Wheel of Fortune, and then the entire answer to one of the puzzles was Mountain Lodge. My jaw dropped, and I was like, are you kidding me?
While these signs were incredible, some people encouraged Bill to move on and find love again. But he was adamant that that wasn't going to happen and took it upon himself to find a way to carry on his love with Irene, and even started a blog called the Red String Society for people to follow along his journey.
I mean, I immediately knew I didn't want to be with anybody else. I mean, the thought of that was just abhorrent. It just made me feel awful. It was abhorrent to me. I would totally feel like I was betraying her. And I know it's okay for other people, and I'm not saying this is the best way to go about this, and I'm not saying they don't love their person as much. But for me personally, there was just no way I could do that. I committed myself. I happened to be in a very fortunate situation. I happen to have a very fortunate background of dealing with psychological stuff and meditating. And my situation was that nobody else was living here with me, so I had 24/7 to do it. I worked from home. I had my own business and worked from home. That didn't require much time at all. So I just plunged into this 24/7, trying to figure out some way to get to a point where I could be not in as much pain. One of the things I realized, because this is kind of important for this, is I realized when I would have these sudden grief attacks, like just came out of the blue. Just before I felt all that grief hit me, there was this sense of my wife that it was like, my mind tried to think of that in terms of like it was a melancholy memory or a sad memory, or just my mind turning to her. But then what I thought was, well, what if that's her? And what if she's reaching out to me? My mind is turning it into this grief thing, and it's just triggering this grief. And fortunately, I had seen what dreams may come. And that's one of the things that happens to Robin Williams after he dies. He tries to reach out to his wife, and she just screams out in pain. So I told her, look, I think that's you. Don't stop doing that because it triggers my grief. I told her, I will figure it out. I will figure out how to separate those two things. Just keep coming, because we can't figure this out and develop, some way of interacting with each other unless we just keep doing it. So I told her I'll keep doing it. And I noticed, like, some of my dreams, I would have very good dreams of her, and then I'd have some weird dreams. And I told her, don't stop coming into my dreams. Even if they produce weird stuff, I won't pay attention to any of the weird stuff. I won't let any of that bother me or hurt me. I know that's my own subconscious getting in there and making things weird. Don't worry about it. Come into my dreams all you want, and I'll figure it out, and I'll enjoy it, and I'll just be grateful if I get to see you. Over time, I established these protocols, right, of how to set this up, to invite them in. And the more I read about the afterlife, from various sources, it's like universally agreed that they can read your mind, they can put things in your mind, they can influence you, and that type of stuff. But the part about reading your mind and putting things in your mind, that gave me the idea that, well, she can do that. If she can join me in my mind, maybe that would be the easiest point, for us to interact. I didn't want her to be doing all the work. I mean, a relationship is a two-sided street. Communication is a two-sided street. And so that's one of the things, that I have, part of the protocol, I guess you can call it, is to give them signs, to show them that you're thinking about them, to talk to them and set their food out, and just include them in your daily life, and then find the. Everybody's got like a different way of. Not everybody has a different way, but there's a lot of different ways to go about this. Whatever works for a person, I fully support. Whatever works for them. But my intent was to make it the easiest and most enjoyable process that I could. And if something was frustrating me, like I tried several different things. I tried EVP for a little while, and it was just the most frustrating thing ever for me to try. So I just ditched it. I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be frustrated and dread trying to sort through this audio file. We're going to find an easier way to do it, something I enjoy doing. I thought, well, these mediums all interact with, in the mind. They come and visit us in our dreams, which is, in the mind. These dream visitations, you're going into your mind when you're trying to achieve an OOBE or a astral projection. So the mind is obviously a real place. So if she can do that, if I can go, like lay down, get calm and get relaxed and visualize and talk to her in my mind and invite her into the visualization, then she can come in there and she can interact with me, She had to beat it over my head that it was her, that I was actually interacting with her there, and that she was actually giving me input and actually creating scenarios there. And she did it through a series of incredible signs, synchronistic signs that were just jaw-dropping. Where she had to work at it because, it's one of those things where you're going, am I really talking to somebody in my head? Am I crazy? Am I making this up in my head? What is going on here? So I told her, look, if I'm going to dive into this and believe this, you are going to have to show me, give me some type of validation that this is what's actually going on. She came through spectacular. I mean, it was like, now I can't not believe it. It's like, it was too spectacular. Our process is, so it's just I just lay down. I do this while I'm walking around too. It's I interact with Irene in my mind when I'm walking around too. And I can direct my thoughts to her, and an image of her will immediately pop in my head, something I'm not trying to create. It will just pop into my head. And I can immediately feel the emotional contact. But this is after years and years of practice. I've been doing this. But I can lie down and then just sort of let the visualization happen, or guide it myself where we're going to be. We hang out at the Mountain Lodge a lot. We hang out at we have a beach house. We hang out there. We've gone on many adventures. We've done many things that have been, that now to me, I experience as vividly as any memory I have of, the real world so we've created new memories, some very dear and beautiful new memories after she died. So today it just feels normal to me that Irene and I are continuing our life, and that we have this, what other people would see as, basically being in denial, or it's all in my head, or, I slipped a cog or two. But it feels so happy and so fulfilling, and I feel so whole with her now. It's just like normal life for me now that we have this transdimensional relationship going forward. So few people try doing this. So few people have ever even known it's possible to do this.
When Bill began sharing about his experiences with Irene from beyond, he was met with some resistance.
About a year after she died, I was really feeling good. But before that, I had actually joined a couple of grief. I got into a grief group, a regular grief group, and I started talking about how I felt better, and that because I wanted, if other people were in pain, I was like, no, it wouldn't hurt to tell other people about this. Well, they threw me out of that grief group as soon as I started talking about feeling better, and one guy direct messaged me and threatened me. I would go into spiritual groups and talk about this, and I would get, this type of love isn't acceptable in the afterlife world. We don't have romantic partners. We don't have marriages. Not everybody, but I'm just talking about these people would say this to me in that public forum, and that I'm holding her back, You're holding yourself back. This isn't a healthy relationship. You're being very unhealthy about your relationship, about your attachment to her, and blah blah blah. And I was actually in a grief group that believed in the afterlife, and these people were going to stay with their partner, committed to their partner until they died. And I spoke in there about, well, this is how I feel really good about my relationship with her. The grief is all gone. I'm very happy. They asked me to leave too.
It was then that William and another person decided to create their own Facebook group for people like themselves and to share their experiences.
We formed the group in January of 2018. I thought, yeah, we're only going to get like maybe tops 10, 12 people who want to do this. It'll be fine. I'll manage that. And so in the beginning, but we started off a weekly Zoom meeting, and the meeting, there were times it was just me and Mary Beth talking about it, which was fine. We loved talking about our partners. So then, one or two other people would trickle in. I had no idea it'd get to the point it is now, with over 2,100 people from around the world, all walks of life, who want to develop and maintain this type of relationship, a committed relationship with their person who has crossed over.
Since creating his blog and Facebook group, Bill has gone on to write 2 different books that document his experiences. With a commitment to learning spirit communication, he was even able to experience his first astral projection with Irene. In case you don't know what that is, like myself, it's the idea that a person's consciousness can leave their physical body and travel in the astral plane, which is a place that some people believe is where a person's spirit goes between dying and entering the spirit world. Let's hear more about Bill's astral projection experience.
I had been practicing some of these techniques to astral project. You can find them on YouTube or read them in a book. But what you're trying to do is either move your consciousness out of your body, okay, which you'll then automatically have your astral body, okay, which looks like a lot like your body, or you can just move your consciousness over into. And you'll be looking at your body at that point, and then you can go on and follow some steps and do some methods, and then go to one of the astral planes where you can talk and interact with dead people. So the other one is the one that I experienced was I was laying down and imagining Irene was with me, that I had my arms around her, and we were talking about our adult children. Then we were talking about how we could help them and blah blah blah. Now this in my mind is, by this time I had realized Irene had made it clear that I'm talking to her. This isn't something I'm making up in my mind. So without me falling asleep or getting groggy or any change in consciousness whatsoever, I found myself physically sitting on a couch, completely real. Everything's completely real. Irene is sitting next to me. She died when she was 60, and she looked about 35. I could feel her next to me. It just happened like that. And the conversation didn't change. It didn't blip. It didn't move. It was smooth. So it was like somebody just changed the channel where the same dialogue is coming from the same actors, but they're just in a different place. It took me about 5 minutes for my mind to even catch up with the scene had changed, and I started looking around, and I looked at her, and she had gotten up to walk over somewhere while we were talking, and I ran my hand across the couch. It's some of the techniques about astral projection is to feel the texture, to keep yourself grounded in the astral plane. I looked down at the carpet, and I was looking at my hands. Now, at the time, I didn't even realize it was an astral projection. I was just doing these things out of habit. I was thinking in my head, this is the craziest visualization I've ever had in my life. This is so real. Everything is so real. I'm here. I'm physically here. I remember I'm laying on the bed. I was laying on the couch talking to Irene. I can look into the next room. I can see everything on the walls. There was nothing weird going on. It was just like here. It was just like here, except there was maybe a greater sense of reality to it. I could just feel how real everything was. It was crazy. During the conversation, I'm just flabbergasted. I'm just looking around, my jaw, hanging. I'm like, how did this happen? I'm looking at my wife and listening to what she's saying. And so the conversation, which has been going on this whole time, had changed to what we could do for our adult children from the perspective of the astral plane, because there were things they came here to do that were hard experiences to go through, but we didn't want to mess that up. We had to let them go through those because they came here to go through. So there were things we could do in supporting them, but there's also things we didn't want to do to divert them from going through the things they came here to do. And I realized, wow, this is a brand new conversation. And I said, hey, babe. And she says, she turns around, looks at me, and she says, what? And I said, we're having a brand new conversation. This is amazing. It was then that I could see the light go off in her eye, and I felt this, where she knew that this wasn't the usual me up in the astral plane, who's aware of everything that's going on, that my consciousness from this world had, I guess, taken over or gone there into that place. And she realized who she was talking to now, what version of me or whatever you want to call it, what she was talking to. And her face just lit up, and she ran over and she threw her arms around me and she gave me this big kiss. And I wasn't waking up, but that's when I felt the bed underneath me. And then it all faded out, and I could still feel her lips on mine, but then that's when it was over. That was our first astral projection together. I so love this situation now with Irene and I being in these two different worlds, being able to collaborate and talk, and being able to essentially, so this is our thing, is to create what we want in our afterlife. And it's like, I'm here collecting information, and looking things from this perspective. She has it from over there and from that perspective. And I wouldn't have it. I mean, this is hard for a lot of people to understand, especially people who are still in grief over somebody who died. But I am actually very grateful this happened, because it really made me realize what's truly important to me. Made me realize how much I love my wife, how important that relationship is to me. It showed me everything that she means to me. And I don't know if there's any way to get that. I don't know if there's any other way to get that information than to love somebody that much and then them die. For me, this is a very exciting and magical and wonderful kind of phase of our relationship that not a lot of people get to. Not a lot of people have ever gotten to experience it this way. For one thing, there's no social acceptance of it. There's no real way, there's very few people you could ever talk to about this type of stuff. Nothing else that I have in life or have accomplished in life matters that much to me. The fact that Irene and I have accomplished this, that we found each other, we succeeded, in our relationship together, through thick and thin, we stayed together, and even after death, we stayed together. And I at this end, I'm really kind of joyful about the fact that I get to show my wife how much I love her. That her death didn't stop it. And I am still reaching out to her, and I'm still talking to her, and it's kind of an honor or privilege, or however you want to put it, that I am in this situation, that I get to show her, how much she means to me.
I just love listening to Bill's story, and I sure hope you did as well. I hope that it gives you hope and inspires you to connect with your loved ones. Before we end this episode, let's hear from Bill to get his final thoughts.
For the afterlife, I would say this, is that we're all going there. And nobody needs to worry about that. Your loved ones are there. They're fine. There's a lot, we call it the afterlife, but to me, that's like, I don't know if I said this before earlier, but it's like living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and calling every place else in the universe the after Tulsa. It's just it's a continuum. It's not like one place, and it's not like one set of conditions, and it's not like, so you don't have to be looking around for the truth about, the afterlife. There's a lot going on over there, and there's a lot of different ways to live. If you look into your heart and see what you love, see who and what you love, that's what's waiting for you. That's what's waiting for you in the afterlife. You just let that out and let yourself go into that. That's what's there. That's actually, in my view, that's actually where this inner part of you already is. Right? And that's why it yearns for this so much, and that's why it desires this so much and feels such an affinity to this. A lot of people would think it's too good to be true. Well, this is why people call it heaven. This is why people call it paradise. Is it's not too good to be true. It's just, a very wonderful place. For me, what the evidence has indicated is that when humans here die, the reason they go to a place that is a lot like this, but just better, is because that is what their consciousness is attuned to, and that's what their heart yearns for. So those two things kind of meet. And most people, when they die, they find themselves in a place that's like that. They often say it feels like they've come home. They feel this love. They feel at ease there, at peace there. And that the people and animals and the things that they love are all there. And we don't have to worry about finding ourselves in some type of bizarre state or bizarre condition or situation. It's very physical. The dead themselves say it's more solid and more real than this world is to us. When you know this in your heart, it makes this world so much easier to go through. It can make this world even enjoyable. When you realize this is just a temporary place that you've come to experience something. And, they may not be all wonderful things, but I often say we don't come here for the rainbows and lollipops. We have that in the afterlife. We come here to find out how much that world means to us. And you can't know that without coming to a world like this and experiencing this. So it's all worth it.
It sure is worth it. What an incredible story. I so enjoyed my chat with William, and I hope you did as well. As we do with all of our stories, if you were inspired in any way, it would mean the world to us if you would like to make a small donation on behalf of Irene to the American Cancer Society. All information and links will be in our show notes. And if you're interested in sharing your story, please send an email to nextrealmpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, friends, and we'll see you in the next episode.